So at this stage, it is about peacekeeping. It is about freezing the lines where they are. It's about confidence-building measures between the sides. Now, those are the thoughts of the White House's National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, as US, Russian and Ukrainian delegations are assembled in the same facility in Riyadh. Now, already the US has met with Ukrainian officials, those officials afterwards calling the talks productive. Today, the US is talking now to the Russian delegation to try to find ways forward towards peace. Well, we're going to cross straight to talk to our former Russia correspondent, Nick Holdsworth, who joins us now from Berlin. Nick, so far, not much, if any, a lot of critics would say, sign of Russia making any compromises here.
No compromises on the Russian side whatsoever. The Kremlin spokesman said of the hopes from the American side of the talks, well, there's a lot to discuss. Basically, Russia is looking to have some kind of a ceasefire arrangement in the Black Sea so that it can resurrect the Black Sea Pact that they had up until 2023, where that allowed Ukraine to export grain in return for the easing of sanctions by the West on Russian agricultural and mineral exports. Now, that faltered a couple of years ago and Russia pulled out of it. The Russians are keen to get that back and up and running. As for responding to any of the talking points from the American side, I mean, Steve Witkoff, President Trump's emissary to Russia, who's at those talks, hosting those talks in Riyadh, he's talked about talking about getting some of those children, the Ukrainian children that the Russians have taken, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian children taken away from their homes and given to Russian families for adoption. He said, well, you know, that's on the table, and the Kremlin has just turned around and said, well, no, that's not up for discussion. It looks like President Putin is playing for time. He thinks that Russia is on the verge of kicking the Ukrainians out of that Kursk region of Russia that they took back in August last year. They're making advances on other areas of the front. He feels confident that they're almost on the borders of those 4 eastern territories which they took in 2022, and he wants to finish up with lines that coincide with where Russia wants to be, not where America or Ukraine wants to be. So these talks are going to be pretty tough, and I'm doubtful that there's going to be much to celebrate this week on the conclusion of those talks.
Yeah, that phrase you use there, Nick, playing for time, does seem to be a real one that a lot of critics are using over these talks. I mean, for example, there's no sign that on the ground that there's been any slowing of attacks on Ukraine.
There's been no progress whatsoever on this apparent Russian agreement to cease attacks on Ukrainian critical infrastructure. We saw heavy attacks on Kyiv over the weekend, on Odessa. Ukraine is also still sending drones into Russia. Its drones successfully attacked the Engels strategic nuclear bomber air base in the centre of Russia, just on the river Volga. I mean, about 1,000 kilometres away from Moscow. They hit some of those Tupolev bombers. Apparently, 2 Russian pilots were killed. So both sides are still hitting each other's critical infrastructure, whether that's civilian or military. So there seems to be no 30-day ceasefire whatsoever, and the Russians are determined not to sign up to anything that doesn't meet their red lines. And the Americans don't seem particularly keen to push them on those red lines.